Right, in this tutorial, I'll show you how to set up a simple face rig for Daisy using an image sequence for the mouth and some simple geometry for the eyes and eyebrows. First of all, I'll go into face mode. I'm going to just select all her faces on her head, right click and assign a new material. Just a Lambert for now, and then back into object mode. Have a look over in the attribute editor, Lambert 9, that's hopefully the one I've just assigned. She's got a lot of materials assigned to her. Always test it out by just moving that around. Yep, that's the one that's assigned to her. Best way. So let's just quickly give this a name so I can find it again. Let's call it face material, so face matte. And we'll just assign one of the actual image sequence textures to it, so she's got the same skin tone for the rest of her face. So I'm just going to load up a file and image name, and look, I've got a whole sequence here, mouth 1 down to 7. Look, I've got a duplicate of a PNG because I had one with transparency in it, but these are the image files we're going to be loading, so you can see these are the different sequences that will load up when we get this working. So I'm just going to load up mouth 1 for now. Open that up. You can see it looks a bit bizarre here because we need to set up our UVs. So we have a look in the UV texture editor and select her. We can see, look, there's her face. So let's just move those kind of out of the way for now, and then we'll redo the UVs for the actual mouth poly. So I'm just going to move that right out of the way, make it nice and small. So it's getting the skin tone because this texture here tiles all into these areas, but I don't want it to get any of the actual mouth shape. So look, I'm just moving it right out of the way over here for now. Then what I'm going to do is, at the moment, this is just loaded as a static texture, just in a regular kind of way when you assign it to the color channel. I'm going to pick these faces now, and I'm going to assign a new material, but I'm going to then load that as an image sequence. So again, I select the faces, I right click, I go assign new material, exactly the same again, Lambert. I'll find it over here. Let's call this a name again. Let's call it mouth matte, as in mouth materials. Just so I can find it again. You can see it's gone grey. It's just the default Lambert texture there. You can double check it's the right one by wiggling that about. And then I just want to map to the color channel here. So again, just a file, and I click on this folder here, and I load up mouth 01 JPEG. Open that up like so. That's loaded that up, but what I want to do now is check out the UVs. So before, I'm going to turn on image sequence in a bit, but let's sort out the UVs first. So we go to the UV texture editor, and we need to pick those faces again. So let's pick those faces. Probably should have done this before I assign the material, but it's not a big deal. It's a simple model, so they're easy to select. Make sure I've got nothing else selected, and I'll go UVs, planar, and I just make sure that's set to the Z channel, so it's just look straight on her face like so. I'll just scale those down a bit like that, and I might have to reset these in a minute because I've already got skin weights on this model, and if you've got skin weights on a model and you start doing UV projections, you sometimes get a weird effect. I'll show you. So let's just double check this. So I'm just going to turn on the skeleton. I've got this on hidden on a display layer. Go back into object mode. I'm going to pick this. Let's just check. Yeah, you can see the UV projections in the history. So the UV projections keeping this, the texture static. So what I want to do, I don't want to lose my skin weights, even though I haven't done a lot of paint weights on it, but I want to just get rid of this construction history, this history here, but keep my my skin cluster. So if I go edit and delete by type and non-deformer history. Okay, that's got rid of it. And look, you can see the UVs have moved, but I can tweak them and get them back to where they were, and they should be okay once I've reset them. So I'll put that there, scale it up a bit, and that should be okay now. Let's just delete that non-deformer history again, and let's check that the textures follow her around now. Let's see if I can pick that bone. That's better. Okay, so just be wary of that. If you ever add construction history on an object that's got skin weights, you might have issues. And if you want to keep your skin weights but delete the construction history, you have to do an edit, delete by type, non-deform history, so you leave any deformation history on the model. Just be aware of this. It doesn't always work if you've got a whole stack of construction history, so keep an eye on that. So this is kind of working. What we want to do now is turn this static image into an image sequence. So let's go to our attribute editor, find our mouth material, here it is, and click on this to go to the actual file node. Here we are. and we want to turn on use image sequence. And because these are named 01 to 07 and they've all got the same file names in the same kind of format, they should load up. You can see now they have loaded up, and if I run my little time slider, they play through until they get to the end, and then it just goes grey. So not ideal at the moment. If we play our animation, they will just play like as a little sort of sequence, like a little flip book. So I want to turn that off so I've got control over that. So what I do now is I right click on this and delete expression. Okay, and now I can actually type in exactly what file number I want. Okay, and that will relate to whatever image sequence is in there, so up to 7, like so, and so forth. The next thing I want to do is you can key them in here. You can right click and go set key and stuff like that, but it's not ideal because for the key ticks to actually show up on the time slider, you need to have this file node selected. Now you can do that in the hypershade, which is up here, but it's easier to have something driving those numbers. Okay, so I'll show you how to do it. I have already set up an attribute on the bone to drive this, because at the moment this is a really simple rig, so I've got this bone that will drive the head about. So if we have a look in the channel box, look, I've got something called mouths here, and that's created by going into modify and add attribute, like so. I'll create another one, just a dummy one to show you. You give it a name, so I'll call this one mouths 2. And because this is dealing with whole numbers, it's dealing with, you know, image numbers, so it doesn't need any decimals, like no 1.1s and so on. We want it set to an integer like this. Okay, and then we want the minimum 1, the maximum images we've got is 7, and then we just go add, close that window down, and we've got mouths 2 here as well. So you can add these attributes onto this. Okay, so that's added to that bone, and now what I want to do is connect the two things together. To do this, we want to open up the connection editor. So go to General Editors, and down here, the Connection Editor, and load that up. Make sure the left display has clicked the Show Non-Keyable is off, and the same for the right, because otherwise you get loads of information appears in here. So we'll load up this bone first, load it up, there we go, and if we turn on the non-keyable, you'll see loads of things appear, and it makes it very confusing. So we turn that off. And now what we want to do is load up that file node, okay, into the reload left. So we need to go to the hypershade here. We need to go to this texture tab here, and I think it's the second one along, okay, because the first one is the static one that's been assigned just as a skin tone to the rest of the face. So the second one along. I can close that window down, but just make sure it's selected. Look, it highlights yellow. Close that window down and reload that into the right, and look, that's loaded up stuff to do with that file too. Again, I should have probably named the node when I was in the attribute editor to make it a bit easier. So look, we're going to have the mouths output here, drive. What we want is frame extension, that, okay, and that's linked those two things up. Okay, and if we close that window down, hopefully it will work. We click on this, click on mouths, and if I just press the middle mouse button, so the mouse wheel and drag left and right, you can see it's playing the sequence. Okay, and I can just choose which one I want, and then I can key it. So ideally what you can do is this. You can pick Daisy's head, you could key Daisy's head, you know, moving, like so, and then as she's moving, you could change these mouth textures. So look, one way you can actually key explicit channels here is by right-clicking key selected, like so, and then at this point here, I can change it to a different expression, like that, and key selected, and obviously it's going to change back when it gets to here, because I keyed that before, but I could again key a different face, and right-click again, key selected. So you've just got control over that image sequence, purely through that bone, so you're not having to select lots and lots of things. So that's how you set up the image sequence.